Some interesting news coming out yesterday, though. Gerald Chatman, the defensive line coach, who, we haven't seen a defensive line as good as it was this year in a while. When was the last time we had a really good defensive line?
Probably 2019.
Yeah, that was really
Bernard and Ja'Kai Polite, yeah.
Yep. And like the interior, though, like, when's the last time we had a good interior defensive line?
Was Dexter on that team? On those team? I can't remember the timeline.
No.
Of him. Okay.
Jaron Dexter first year was 2020.
Okay.
Which we did not have a good defensive line then.
Yeah, no.
So,
good top to bottom. Like I don't know. Probably going back to the McElwain days for that one.
Or whiff in the portal. Who did we whiff in the portal recently?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure who you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm not. In the last week?
Yeah, I'm trying to think who we've whiffed. Because we've whiffed on quite a few guys, but not in the last week.
But talking about Gerald Chatman, I think if we do end up losing Gerald Chatman, I don't know how you're...
Hero Kanu, sorry.
Oh, Hero Kanu, yes, from Texas. Okay, we'll get into that a little bit.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
So talking about Gerald Chatman, he's someone that we've seen come in and really turn players like Caleb Banks into someone that was like an average SEC defensive tackle into a potential first-round pick next year. We've seen Tyreek Sapp go from a guy who we all knew had potential. You just look at him and be like, okay, that's a player that if I'm lining up against, I'm worried. And now he's also a potential first-round draft pick. I've seen both of them in those scenarios. And then you look at Cameron Jackson, who recently at the Senior Bowl, they're calling him maybe the strongest player in the entire Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
He's starting to he's shooting up draft boards too. I remember going into the season, there were talks like, is Jason Marshall the only Gator that might get drafted?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're looking at like offensive linemen in Brandon Crenshaw Dixon. Now looking at Cam Jackson also, and Marshall's still also probably drafting like DK and Badger there. But if we do lose Chatman, I also wonder how it affects us recruiting wise. Does he have that really close relationship with like a Joseph Mbachu or Jeremiah McLeod, who I think are two pretty highly rated 4-star guys with some good potential and good size?
Because the portal would open immediately for those guys if you were to leave, correct? That's how that works.
I believe so. I don't think the portal opens, but we have to release them, or they can apply for.
Well, that's what I mean. Like you're allowed to portal outside of the portal window if your position coach, coordinator, or head coach leaves. I'm pretty sure is the rule.
Because that's
apologies if I'm wrong on that. This is all new and we're trying to figure it out as we go. But I think that's how the rule works now.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Chatman, like, talk about a quick turnaround and kind of the perception of him. I think, at least from my perspective, when Florida hired him, it kind of seemed like really? Like, is this the guy? If I remember, so he was an analyst at LSU who was promoted to interim defensive line coach in the spring and then left to go to Tulane.
Okay. Yeah.
Where he was the full-time defensive line coach. So had basically only been and was previously a defensive coordinator at Colorado too. So it's not like he had no experience, but it's not, but he was just coming from one season at Tulane as a defensive line coach, wasn't exactly like a highly touted guy in the industry. So a lot of people were like, really, is this the best hire? But man, seems like he did a really good job this year, both developing the players on the roster, on the recruiting trail. I think, and then getting the NFL interest, it's like a double-edged sword, because it's on one hand, like an affirmation of what they're doing staff-wise, that your guys are getting interviews for NFL positions like that, but obviously would be a pretty significant loss for the Gators if you were to leave.
Yeah, I also would wonder how this would affect the recruiting-wise, because we've seen recently we talked about the trenches specifically with the offensive line, but we're also getting some good defensive linemen on the take visits. 4-star out of Fort Myers, James Johnson, Carter Lucky out of Georgia. We already talked about those two edge rushers who also Chatman does coach, and he does recruit. He does recruit a lot of guys. I think he's a really good recruiter. As well as the really good relationship with them, like edge Trent Henderson. Chatman, I believe, is listed as his recruiter. and Valden Stone, who's someone I think if he kind of looks like a Florida guy. Took some pictures and stuff, and it's like, Billy's like very calm, collected, dressed nice for like stuff, like, and that's kind of how he was like and everything. So that's the one. I think he decommitted from Alabama recently. So again, I wonder if we do lose those guys, we do lose Chatman, what happens with this D-line class? I mean, we saw with Vinny Suntory, it looks like hiring a new safety coach, which we didn't have, or Austin Armstrong seems to be a bonus benefit of Suntory, because now we're looking at those guys like Braylon Womack, who's now visiting, and we're now heavily into his recruitment.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add here. We'll just have to see what happens. Doesn't mean he's leaving. Doesn't mean the Bears are going to make him an offer. But certainly something to watch, because I think that would be a pretty big loss for this staff. And now you're trying to backfill a position. You'd be trying to do it, in February, which is not quite as easy. So, yeah, I mean, hoping he stays, because I think he's done a really nice job.
Yeah, so continuing on the D-line, Rod brought it up. Hiro Kanu, defensive tackle from Ohio State. He entered the portal. He took a visit to Florida, took ones to Texas and Georgia as well, I believe. Ends up committing to Texas. I believe we would have had him come here to play a nose tackle. That position does look weak right now. Yeah. I mean, you're relying on guys being healthy with Jamari Lyons, and then young players like we saw last year. We saw DeAndre Robinson play a good bit, and Mekhi Barrow. Then you also have some freshmen that, I mean, I'm not really going to add into there, because freshman nose tackles, I mean, we saw him this year play actually pretty well, but missing on Kanu. From what I heard, Texas does lose some interior defensive linemen, so we're looking for maybe a depth guy. I don't know how elite he was or how good he was. It's like we knew with Keyshawn Silver, he's a good defensive nose tackle and someone that is guaranteed to start for us and everything. With Kanu, I don't know if he's someone that we're looking to push the room, or if we're looking for someone to just be another guy on that room who can maybe start, maybe not. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like to me when Florida first kind of started going after him, it seems like it would have been a nice addition. I mean, he hasn't really produced at Ohio State. It's kind of just been a rotational player that hasn't really produced a ton. He was a pretty highly rated recruit, though. So I think there's potential there. I mean, I'll be honest, though, regardless of what this says about the state of Florida's program, as soon as I saw that Georgia and Texas were interested and we're going to bring him on campus for visits, I was like, yeah, probably not getting this guy. I mean, I'm just not sure Florida's at the level to consistently win battles with transfers with those programs. I think they've done it a couple times in recruiting. I think that's easier to do with high school recruiting. I think it's a lot more difficult to do with transfers who are kind of just going to hopefully go for 1 year. They just want to go to the team that's best poised to showcase their abilities in that one season. So just kind of is what it is. I don't think he would have transformed the team fundamentally going into next year, but certainly a position where Florida's relying a lot on development here, because it's not a lot of proven bodies along the interior of the defensive line outside of Banks, especially at the nose tackle position.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're also noticing a trend here where they prefer to go after high school guys over the transfer portal. I mean, we know how much money it took Dallas Wilson, probably nearly $1 million to go get a freshman, instead of we could have spent that on a transfer portal receiver or another one that could have been like a Dane Key or Noah Thomas, who probably would have cost around that same amount. So I do think there is a way Billy wants to build the program, and it's like maybe he's going to trust his young guys like he will with maybe, because there's still the spring portal. And I mean, we've seen them get lucky, or if you want to say lucky, or get some guys in that spring portal who have been really big impactors. I mean, Ricky Pearsall, first round draft pick, and Elijah Badger, really good receiver this year. So don't know how that will end up. But I just noticed there's definitely the focus on the recruiting end. And honestly, I think if we do have if we do finish this season with 9-10 wins, I think we'll have our first top 5 class in 10 years. or over 10 years. I mean, I fully believe that Billy is a really good recruiter. And if he just figures stuff out off the field, I mean, on the field, and like now there is more backing, it seems, from the program. Like we did just get that $2 million in. So I do think that he wants to build this school with recruiting. Not fully like Dabo, because we obviously have taken a lot of transfers. I mean, we took double-digit amount last season.
Mm-hmm.
I think he only wants to take transfers if it's like an absolute need. Like wide receiver, we were only turning one wide receiver who even has like 600 yards. And that's Trey Wilson, who was coming off injury. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that Billy wants to build this program through developing high school guys. Like that, I think that's been pretty clear from day one. Even when they were active in the portal, the guys they were taking were more like, we literally need a veteran body here right now because we do not have someone to take that role. So, but I mean, even when they were taking bigger classes, they were taking a lot of guys that were, kind of like RJ Moten sort of players, that that not necessarily coming in expected to start, just needing to provide depth because the personnel is not there right now.
I would like to say as well with some of these transfer classes, I mean, Cormani McLean, going into his second year when we took him. I mean, we took him, Grayson Pup Howard. These are two guys that they also really wanted out of high school. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's a good benefit of this staff is they don't give up on a player. They don't break any bridges with any of these players that end up choosing other schools because they know with the transfer portal that they could end up still coming here. And I mean, Pup Howard's now was probably our best linebacker when he was playing from this past season.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always the case of, they don't choose Florida, but they could end up back at UF. And they like development. I don't know what exactly it is that makes them like developing these players so much over just getting some a transfer that has proven talent. And then like another one, Jason Zandamela, someone that they wanted out of high school, didn't come here. They got him in the portal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is there are certainly risks with portal guys, like even ones that are proven talents. We've seen guys be very productive in one year at one school and then go somewhere where on paper they should be as productive, if not more so, with what's around them. And then it just doesn't work out that way. So I do understand there's something to be said for, guys you intimately know and you know where they're at in their development, what you can expect out of them versus a transfer, which even the transfer that has the most film on them possible is still a wild card to some degree.
Yeah.
But I think Billy's just going to live and die with that development this year because there's quite a few positions of key positions where he's going to be relying on that, where they didn't portal a proven starter, where there's going to be a new guy kind of elevated and we don't necessarily know who that is right now. I mean, I think the interior defensive line is one of them, or at least, nose tackle opposite Caleb Banks. And, the play of that interior was, I think, a big reason the defense took a big step down the stretch last year. So if you're going to keep up that progress defensively, you're going to have to find some way to replace Cam Jackson there. And, I think if you don't, you're probably going to see the defense take a step back to where more like it was earlier in the year. And that is probably going to that probably cost Billy his job if that happens. So, he's really gambling on, there's the gamble of taking the portal guys, and then he's taking the gamble of, believing in his guys. And, we'll see how it all pays off. This is kind of the year that's going to determine all that.
Yeah, honestly, I don't hate it because it will determine it. Like if he's going to live and die by it, we'll see if it works or if it does end up not working.
I mean, and Rob, I don't disagree with this. I agree. Like, I think Florida should have been a little bit more aggressive in the portal than they were. I just do recognize that there were limited spots, and they do really like the guys that are homegrown. That's kind of all I'm saying.
Basically, Billy's not gonna panic. He's not gonna rush things. He's gonna do things the way he wants to and thinks they should be done. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is make or break. I feel like this is the make or break year. I mean, there is like the word where we go 7-5 again, and it's like, oh, but you still have Lagway for his junior season, where that happens, and then after that it'll be make or break. But like, I do feel like most fans and most analysts will know if we don't make like that 9 wins this season, then we're probably not doing it next year. And it's like, wow, the administration will give them the next season. Most fans probably will know, like, okay, the writing's on the wall.
I'm not so sure the administration gives him another season at 8-4. To be quite honest with you, I think that's circumstantial. I think it depends on how it looks and what happens. I mean, if you go 8-4, ending the year on a 4-game winning streak like they did this year, he's probably fine. But if it's more of a hot start and then later collapse, I think he's in big trouble at 8-4.
Yeah. I'm hearing no. I'm hearing he's going to transfer out when he gets it, but that's to be determined.
That would be my expectation as well. I don't really have intel there. That's just kind of what I've